Growing up in an entrepreneurial household was all about possibilities. My grandfather, my dad were always open to new ideas, concepts, always thinking about what could be possible. So really, opened up my creative horizon, as far as what would work, what wouldn't. Got me studying businesses at an early age. Always kind of loved business. I think I probably did grow up a little bit different than others. There was a lot of business talk at the table. There was always, something to do involving the business. Yeah, early on, tough things that were, difficult to handle was that my dad was probably more difficult on me than he was on anybody else. The expectation for me was higher. Dealing with that was challenging, but I also, down deep kind of enjoyed that, like the expectation, having a high expectation. What was the ideal picture of me being my own boss was I knew that if it was left up to me and I had the work ethic, that I could get to a point and I could always figure something out, and I wasn't going to be led astray by somebody else who maybe wasn't sleeping, breathing, whatever it was. It doesn't really matter that I'm washing cars. It's who I am is what's most important. Who am I today? I got serious when I was 25. I knew I wanted to be my own boss. The reason I want to be my own boss is because I don't accept anything less than the best. I know that in the car wash business, I can do that. We've got 4 or 5 sites running now. My dad washed cars here. My grandfather washed cars here. My great-grandfather did laundromat and dry cleaning here. So Bowling Green is near and dear to my heart. I've got my daughter here. I want to have an opportunity for us to kind of maintain and control the car wash business in this area. I'm born and raised here. I grew up here, learned how to work, wash cars here. My father washed cars here. His father was in business here. So dominating the car wash market in Bowling Green is a must-do. That's what we're going to do. My daughter, I want her to have the same opportunity that I had. So I'm here, not going anywhere. This is Car Wash Boss. This is my way, my story. Let's do it.
I think he always had his mindset on Hollywood, okay? But I think my father talked him out of that one, that needed to stay and work in the business, basically. And he started managing some stores of mine when I was needing some help. I had a couple people that were key individuals in my staff that were thinking about leaving, going elsewhere, doing something different. And so I asked him to come on board and help me basically run the operations I had. It's difficult at times as far as running with family. I had the same thing with my dad. He wanted to go one way and I wanted to go the other, and we'd always have to clash or meet in the middle and kind of work out a plan. Jeff and I would have issues on marketing. Okay, I would have a percentage of gross sales I wanted to spend on marketing, and that was it. And he was having troubles hitting that number. He would sometimes exceed that. And so there was always communication about the marketing and the spending of dollars on marketing. Then there was also, we always looked for a dollar per car or number of cars per man hour. labor issues. So we're constantly monitoring the labor versus the volume of the wash. So there was always, he was always wanting to have it a little heavier on labor than I was, but I think that's kind of typical with management today. Jeff has a good operation. He believes in more customer service than probably what we did back then. You know, so they kind of pamper the customer more so than what we were, but it all works well.
The biggest thing I learned from working with my dad is to have a standard of excellence in what I do. You know, is to try to be the best that, you know, I can be at everything. That, you know, mediocrity is not good enough. I found when I was working for him, I was managing, and when he pulled on the lot, everybody started to act different. You know, everybody got busy. They got a broom, you know, and they, you know, did what he expected when he was there. You know, and that night I went home and I really had a epiphany or whatever, a realization that I realized that, you know, I asked myself, was anything that he was asking for out of line? No. And then I really just kind of had an awakening in the sense of, who do I work for? You know, do I work for my dad or did I work for myself? And that day I kind of made a commitment to those ideals that he wanted, or those, you know, tasks that he wanted to be done. Those were all right. He was successful. That's what made him successful. So then from that day on, I was going to start, you know, implementing those tasks and ideals, you know, when he wasn't there. You know, I'm there. So I started that practice, and that's really what got me to the next level, is I started mimicking, you know, those expectations, so on and so forth. And, you know, a lot of people say, you know, is it a shtick? You know, and it's not. It's who I am. You know, if it's not being the best we can be, I don't want to be associated with it. So I think that's probably the most important thing that I learned from working with my dad.
Growing up in an entrepreneur family has definitely been very high-paced and fun, and I feel like nothing is off limits that we can do. It's always taught me to like work hard for what you want, and things don't grow overnight, but if you're passionate about what you do and you see a vision, I think it's just all about the drive. And I've really seen that firsthand from my father, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather. Seeing all of their success is really inspiring, and it makes me feel like I can do anything that I want to do if I put my mind to it.
It's a daily adventure, you know, but that's part of life. It's part about being a dad and son's relationship. I mean, you're going to have tiffs, and there's going to be tempers flare, and they're going to say things you wish you hadn't, but in the end, you work it out. As far as us working together, it's like oil and water. We still have differences of opinion about how things should be done, and finances. I help him on, you know, basically financing some of his operations. But sometimes it's nothing more than a signature. But you know, that's pretty important to him, I think, as far as advancing, building more stores. But he is getting more comfortable with marketing himself and the brand name to where he now has people wanting to be a partner with him and, you know, bring capital to the table. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, so I worked for my dad handing out hot dogs and balloons at his grand opening. Also before that, when he would have his self-serve car washes and I was with him, I would help clean up the lots, count quarters, be in the equipment rooms with him. I'd be on installs with him. He owned a liquor store. I remember growing up there, you know, audio center. He was kind of a serial entrepreneur. As I got older, he and I had some differences when I was still in high school. I remember one thing that kind of led me to want to be my own boss was I left there and went and worked at a fast food restaurant. And I realized how difficult it was, where the manager would employ their friends and family. And I remember, you know, being a hard worker. My dad and family taught me to be that. And I was producing more work than everyone else there was. You know, and the manager didn't notice me, you know, because they didn't care. You know, it was the passing time for them. and their friends and family come first, got the best shifts, and I was having to do all the work. So I knew at an early age, upon that experience, that I really wanted to be my own boss, because I got a taste of working underneath somebody who wasn't really directing me in the right way. Yeah, I think once I left him and I started not needing him to help me exist, as far as I didn't need him to help me pay the rent, I went out and created my own detail shop, and then, did my first car wash development. I did all that without him. So, I think that's when the respect came, and then, now, that we have a mutual respect, he helps me, he's partnered on deals, and, he's pretty open-minded as well. Like a lot of my marketing concepts and stuff that may be off the wall to some people, he'll actually listen, and he's seen a few of those concepts and ideas pay off. And so now he probably, as I matured and got older, he's more receptive to some of those ideas where, I may have had some wild-eyed, thoughts back in the day that, never could have got, past. But nowadays he pretty much listens and goes with the flow. Good. It's interesting when you look at, we've hired a lot of different people and worked with a lot of different people. I would consider myself to be an overachiever, not necessarily concerned about what my peers are doing as much as what I can do, what is possible for me. That's really how I judge people too, is I look at what, I say what they've got in the tank, can they lay it all on the line, is really a good rule for me.
If you want to grow or get involved in the car wash business, you need to do a lot of homework for one. You need to find a reliable distributor that has good references. Look at all the different manufacturers. We have a couple that we represent that we prefer, but there's a bunch out there. So you have to kind of look around and figure out who's got the best. And then as far as the investment, a lot of people don't understand how much money it takes to get in one of these car washes, express wash. Ground cost, building cost, equipment cost. It's a huge, huge undertaking. You're talking about anywhere from $3 to $5 million, maybe more, for just a basic express wash. So it's a big, big, big investment for a lot of people.
Today we flew into Houston, Texas to visit our buddy, dear friend, Scott Avant. If you know anything about the car wash business and what goes on in it, behind the scenes, back room, Scott Avant is a unique creature. He really is kind of one of the industry's leading water experts. He also is getting into distribution and the supply side of business. We're here at Swish Car Wash, which everybody knows is like the only car wash that shares a Starbucks with the property. So, Scott has a really interesting perspective on the industry and where it's headed, and so we're here to check that out.
Well, car washes are factories, and in a factory you have every kind of trade imaginable, whether it's electrical, plumbing, pneumatics, mechanical. Within that, for example, here at this car wash, we have 7 different kinds of water, all serving different purposes. You have to be pretty adept at identifying what you're working with and what you need to do to solve a problem. You know, I like to tell people that there's 10,000 moving parts in a highly corrosive, wet environment running 12 hours a day all year long. Stuff's gonna break. And if you stay on top of the small stuff, it doesn't become big stuff. So the biggest challenge in our industry, I think, is keeping car washes running because they don't make money when they don't. My story kind of takes us from the beginning of the express wash era, the early beginnings of it, to now. So when I started in the industry, I was making $10 an hour fixing car washes. And I learned early on that that's a challenge. You know, there's a lot of moving parts in a car wash. And ultimately, to stay abreast on the technologies as they were growing and coming out, you spend a lot of time studying, you spend a lot of time with trial and error, you spend a lot of time communicating with factory reps and other field technicians to kind of hone your skills. And with any industry, everybody kind of finds what they're good at. I like to call it car washing by evolution, because something new comes out, it gets put in the field, and then somebody's the guinea pig that has to figure out how to make it work. You know, you can build anything on a bench and make it work, but you put it in the field in a highly corrosive, wet environment, running 12 hours a day, that's a stress test. And with anything new, you tend to find improvements that you make along the way. And so I was given the opportunity by doing the traveling I was doing to see kind of the good and the bad throughout the industry. That's what led me to Swish and gave me the opportunity to come down and build this car wash. So when I got in the industry, it was a $2.5 million prospect to get into the car wash industry. The land was a lot cheaper, building materials were a lot cheaper, equipment was a lot cheaper. It has grown as the express model expanded and expanded and expanded, and people started seeing from outside the industry the margins that you're able to make in the car wash industry, the volume that you're able to do to make those profits. More and more people started getting into it. And it was fun to watch, because ultimately, when you see a guy that's an anesthesiologist that gets into the car wash industry as an investment, and next thing you know, he doesn't want to be an anesthesiologist anymore. He wants to be in the car wash business. Record producers and attorneys and security guards and daycare owners all jumping into the car wash industry. It's an amazing thing to watch. In the past 2 years, maybe even 3, as acquisitions are being made within the industry, you're seeing more consolidation, you're seeing a narrower path to the marketplace. The prices have naturally gone up. And now that same guy that could do it for $2.5 million, 10 years ago, is paying $5 million. And so that price has doubled in a very short window of time. There's the need versus the want. This is what you need to accomplish our mission statement, which is a clean, dry, shiny car. And then there's what you want. Well, if you go for what you need, achieve that in your budget, then anything that's left over, you buy the bells and whistles. But lights and signs and different colored wall panels don't wash cars. The equipment has to be on point. The process has to be on point in order to get a clean, dry, shiny car. I believe that the show starts at the street. Make sure you have a presentable site. It doesn't have to be a Taj Mahal. It just has to be neat and clean. And then once you get them on site, as long as you give them a clean, dry, shiny car, they'll come back. And if they go try your neighbor and he doesn't provide the clean, dry, shiny car that you did, he'll definitely come back. And I think our industry has tended to focus on the show much more than on the clean, dry, shiny car piece. And I try to steer people towards remembering our mission statement. Being successful is budget management and then having a really good plan. So your operational plan is key. You know, you can do everything right when you build it, but then when you open it and you don't operate properly, you're going to struggle. And how do you define that? Well, if you're focused on your numbers instead of on your customers, you're going to make a mistake, because you can always find a way to cut corners. You can always find a way to reduce the amount your chemical bill is, your water bill, your power bill, by changing tips and nozzles and stuff like that to reduce cost. You can reduce staffing, but then are you getting a clean car and are you providing good customer service? And I think the ones that make the mistake are the ones that think that you can build it and walk away and let somebody that doesn't have a vested interest in your success run it. And I think you'll see that as more and more of the larger groups grow and grow and grow, if they don't have a good infrastructure in place to support that single site in that one little town, because they're too busy in the big city supporting 10, then that site's going to suffer. And ultimately, executing a good operational plan after you open is key. You have two things at play right now. Right now, the membership programs out there are what's driving the private equity. This is an industry that has high profit margins, and high profit margins attract private equity. What started it was the memberships. When memberships became prevalent across the nation, and that recurring revenue, in my opinion, that's what got everybody's attention. You know, it's recurring revenue. It drives all of us. You know, we want that recurring revenue. We want to be able to still make money on a rainy day. So it's a great system. And what happens is the larger groups are able to set washes wherever they want them or acquire them wherever they want them, and they can put them as close or as far apart as they want, because they're relying on that membership to be able to go from one site to another, to another, to another, and use that as a sales tool to drive memberships. And it's a good tool. What's going to keep that independent guy operating is service. He's got to outservice his competition. He's going to have to outwork the competition. And there's examples of that all over the place, where, you know, independent operator A is providing towels, detail chemicals. They're greeting every customer in the vacuum area, not just as they load the car. Their uniforms are on point. They're smiling, they're friendly. Customers appreciate that more than just a clean, dry, shiny car. So given independent operator A and mega chain B, who's only focused on driving results, driving numbers, and isn't paying attention to the level of service being provided to the customers, they're not checking their Google reviews or items like that, then independent operator A is going to beat them in that local market. Because I think people forget, a car wash is a neighborhood event. You know, it's you go to the car wash, you go to the grocery store, you go to the pharmacy, and it's all within your neighborhood. The independent operator has to stay focused on his customer service, what the customer's experience is. You know, I know operators that know every one of their customers' names. I mean, you know, hey Bob, hey Joe. and they greet them every time they see them, and their staff are the same way. And then I've gone to other washes where, you know, you don't even know who's working there until you get to the loader station, and then they have to come out because they're in the office staying warm or, you know, on their phone. So the level of service is what drives that independent operator. So I think with the way the roll-up's happening with the acquisitions, and those companies are focused on supplying the private equity retail side, somebody has to step in and be the owner's advocate for new investors and independent operators, which is kind of the role that guys like myself and Jeff Fields take on. We're able to better navigate on the behalf of the new investor through the industry and find our way to where we can still build a car wash at a relatively affordable price. Now you see a half a dozen equity groups moving into Omaha, building sites all over the place. At some point, somebody's got to be able to support those guys. And right now, there's no infrastructure in there. I think that was the big weakness that I've seen for years in the industry is, as a weak link, is the service guy, the install guy, you know, the field service technicians. There's not a school for it. The ones that are good at it are aging out, bad knees, backs, and attitudes. And then you got the new guys, you know, this newer generation doesn't want to work, doesn't want to learn. So you end up with a slew of part changers and nobody really knows how to solve a problem. But lost in that, and lost in all the acquisitions, is the experience. When you've got guys that built their distributorship, you know, 10, 20, 30 years ago and have seen and done it all, being bought out and then pushed out, leaving, you know, a void of experience. And, you know, operating a company is different than operating a distributorship. It's really driven by the labor that goes out and does the work. You know, you can sell a tunnel all day long, but if you can't install it properly and you can't make it operate properly, you've failed your customer, you've caused more problems and cost more money than was budgeted, and that puts a new operator at risk of failure because he's, you know, chasing mechanical issues and spending operating capital on unnecessary repairs that could have been avoided by having an experienced person do the work.